I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I just froze and kept listening. Obviously, they had no idea I was anywhere in the neighborhood, or they wouldn't be having this conversation. "I'm not sure," the woman said. "I really need this partnership, but I think I've earned it on merit." "Yes, you have earned it," he replied, "but so does Jason. Unfortunately, there's only one spot available this year. Honestly, it's a choice right now. All I'm offering is to turn it into a guarantee. I've never cheated on my husband. I love him, and I don't want to disrespect him." "There's no reason to think about disrespecting him. I'm sure he's a great guy. All I'm saying is that for a few nights of working late, I can guarantee you a partnership with Junior. Keep in mind that it's not only the prestige of being a partner at one of the top law firms in the state, but also a big pay raise and an annual bonus from the firm's profits. This is by no means an exorbitant amount of money. In fact, this year, junior partners will receive a bonus of about $100,000. Once you make junior partner, you'll be able to have children without worrying about time off, preventing you from becoming a senior partner in the future." "Okay, good. I think a couple times to get me to partnership is worth it, but you'd better hold up your end of the bargain. I expect to get a full senior partnership by the third opening. I know there are a couple junior partners ahead of me, and it will look suspicious if I beat them. It should be fine by the third time," my wife said, ruining our 5-year marriage. I barely listened to the rest of the conversation except for the plans they were making to drive his car together to the local Holiday Inn Express the following Wednesday after work. She was leaving her car at the office, and if I happened to be driving by, I would see her car in the parking lot and make sure it was still there. Okay, so how did I hear that? It's simple. My wife, Tara, had been acting out the last couple weeks. She worked as an associate at a large and prestigious firm in our state. She refused to discuss her behavior. Being a trusting and honorable husband, I installed spyware on her cell phone, computer, home phone, and a GPS locator on her phone and car. I also installed voice-activated mini dictaphones in her car and purse. The one in her purse looked and worked like a pen, but it had an additional digital voice recorder hidden inside. I knew in advance that they were coming to this particular bar. I took one of the last available booths, it happened to be right next to their booth, and paid the hostess to clear the next booth for them. I positioned myself so they couldn't see me when they entered the stall. I placed a small, sensitive microphone in the grill between the stalls. Yes, I carried a microphone with me. It often came in handy in my work. At least I knew she hadn't cheated on me yet. I also knew that right now she wasn't thrilled about cheating on me either. Maybe if I could prevent it, she'd come to her senses. If she doesn't, we can go to counseling and work things out. I did love her and could forgive her oversight, but only if she didn't go through with it. If she did sleep with him, we were done for. After listening to all these plans, I started to figure it out. Okay, so a few introductions are necessary. My name is Jerry Knotson. I am 5'11" inches tall, fit, and relatively attractive. To keep in shape, I run 5 miles every morning and work out at the gym every evening. I'm an attorney with my own private practice. I worked as a corporate lawyer and hated it. Working at a law firm, I had to take the cases that were assigned to me. Most of the clients were scumbags who were guilty as hell. I was successful in getting their charges reduced or even released. Eventually, I had to quit or lose my mind. At the new firm, I could pick and choose my clients. Sure, I wasn't making as much money, but my conscience was clear, and I slept better at night. Heather is my wife, at least for now. She's an attorney, too. Instead of criminal defense, she went into corporate law, mostly contracts, patents, and personnel issues. She works for a large law firm that represents several different corporations. She worked her butt off to become a junior partner. In the future, she wanted to become a senior partner. I tried several times to convince her to leave the large firm and join me in my small firm, but she sought the power, prestige, and money of becoming a full partner in a large law firm. Over the next few days, I distanced myself from her as I tried to make sense of the new information I had discovered. Yes, I know that many real men would consider me a wuss, but I came to the conclusion that as long as she didn't cross the line into physical infidelity, I could forgive her gaffe and take her back. Yes, the good book says that thought equals action, but it also says that we are all human and can fall. Turn the other cheek, as they say. I decided that if I could stop her from committing a crime, I could forgive her. All those who are 100% honest with their partner, raise your hands. Of course you're not. Everyone has secrets from loved ones. Have you told your mom or dad about the time you were caught smoking behind the bleachers? Have you told your wife about the time you were caught having sex with the prom queen in the locker room? Even something you didn't get caught for, did you confess? Of course not. Little shit doesn't matter. I didn't tell my wife about the small inheritance I got for a worthless piece of real estate from a great aunt who had no children to inherit it. Well, actually, I did tell her about the property and the cabin. We even went there together, once. She didn't like it, and we were only there for an hour, after which she demanded we leave. I actually inherited it a few years before we started dating. I never did anything with it because it was worth almost nothing at the time. The only thing of value in it were a few old cars that needed to be repaired so they could be sold. When we were there together, she never even saw those cars. As far as she knew, they never existed. James, I appreciate the dinner, but I still feel bad, said Heather as James drove her back to his apartment after a very expensive dinner at the most expensive seafood restaurant in our town. I understand, he stated. But it will only be a couple times and your husband will never know. What the fuck? He explained, hitting the brakes in vain. But it didn't matter. An old pickup truck suddenly pulled in front of him onto the curb and braked. Reaction time was what it was. Combined with the bottle of wine they'd had at dinner, it decided his fate. His car slammed into the back of a pickup truck that had stopped right in front of him. He watched as the pickup truck drove forward about 20 feet, then suddenly backed up at full speed and hit the front of his car again. 3 times, before pulling away and leaving the scene. Apparently, Heather got home late that evening. They never made it to the hotel room. The asshole hit his head on the steering wheel and had to go to the hospital to have his forehead stitched and his concussion checked. When he was discharged, according to the blood work that was taken as soon as he got to the hospital, he was arrested for DUI. He was just over the legal limit. She was able to catch an Uber to get back from the scene to the office, pick up her car, and return home. She reasoned that her boss had gotten into an accident on the way to the office, so she would pick up her car and drive home. 3 weeks later, they were a block from the motel when an unmarked Honda Accord car swerved too steeply off the road and slammed into the rear tire and quarter panel of the new Corvette her boss had bought with insurance. The car was out of commission again, and the car that hit them continued on and fled. Another hit and run, another hit on insurance rates. The third time, they had just pulled out of the company parking lot. John already had a third car, a brand new Mustang that he had leased as he waited for the insurance payout for his Corvette that had been totaled in the second accident. They hesitated as he had unexpectedly wrecked 2 cars in the past few months. His history of totaling expensive cars was starting to catch up with him. The fact that no one could corroborate his claims that another car caused the accidents made him responsible. This time it was a black pickup truck. It clipped his Mustang right at the rear right tire. This sent him into a skid, causing the front of the car to crash into the Jersey concrete barriers on the side of the highway. It was a perfectly executed pit maneuver. Since it was late at night and they didn't have a good look at the other car, and there were no other witnesses who saw anything, it went back into James's driving record. I can't even begin to imagine how much the insurance will cost him. With 3 major accidents within a year, does he still have a driver's license? Apparently, yes. He'd have to be a hell of a lawyer to pull something like that off. I've decided that drastic measures are necessary. Up until now, I'd refrained from the big gun. For one thing, I didn't want to seriously hurt my wife. My goal was to prevent her from making a deal with this scumbag. I really hoped that if I made their relationship too difficult, they would just end it. He was a selfless bastard. I gotta hand it to him. Most guys would have given up by now, figuring she was out of luck, but not this guy. Okay, I admit my wife was gorgeous and had a great ass, but still, She was now costing this creep almost $1,000 in increased insurance payments, not to mention he had spent at least $100,000 on a new car. Now he was driving a Ford Focus. That was all the rental company gave him. The big gun I have already mentioned is the Mack truck. I refrained from using it as it could have caused serious damage to the passengers of other cars. The timing had to be right. In this case, it was between the time he picked up the truck and the time he had to pick up my wife from the office. I didn't want my wife to suffer collateral damage. Unfortunately for me, he was very careful driving. Unfortunately for him, a Mack truck versus a Ford Focus is not exactly a level playing field. By the time he got out of the hospital, the other partners had already voted to give Josh a junior partnership based on merit. 2 weeks went by. I was just about to close the office to attend to her personal problems. I had just enough time to get to my great-aunt's farm and pick up the unregistered truck I needed. At this point, my assistant called me, informing me that I was needed in the office. I tried to postpone the conversation, but she insisted that I needed to talk to the customer immediately. I decided I still had a few minutes and agreed. I sat down at my desk and called my assistant to let the client in. A few minutes later, I was shocked to see the founding partner of my wife's law firm walk into my office. He was the founding partner of the most successful law firm in the state, and he came to consult with me, a small one-man law firm. WTF? After some brief pleasantries, he cut to the chase. Jerry, I know what's going on. He began. James tried to seduce your wife to guarantee her a partnership. He doesn't actually have a say in it, but she doesn't know that. She thinks that he, as a full partner, has a say. The reality is that he doesn't. The reality is that Josh will get the partnership no matter what happens. Yes, she tried her best, but so did Josh. She just came in second place. It was close, but numbers are numbers. Truth be told, she could take that spot next year or the year after if she keeps up the same workload. While we'd love to have her as a full partner, I think there's a better option for her that would benefit all concerned. And what would that be? I asked, intrigued by his statement. A gleam appeared in his eyes as he looked at me. Actually, he stated, I think she would be most useful as outside counsel at a small law firm we could contract with. We're about to eliminate one of our senior partners for moral integrity. Of course, a ransom will be required, but it will be far less than what they think he is worth. That will leave a big hole, and we will have to contract with another firm to help us out. Obviously, your wife will have to leave our firm, but she can get a job with a small firm that we just contracted with. Of course, there would be a substantial severance package, say, a full year's salary. Of course, the small firm we contract with will receive a fee of $1 million for their services. After all, she is already familiar with these cases and their principles. This agreement could be worth several tens of millions of dollars to the firm we contract with. And what does the principal of this law firm have to do to get such a contract? I asked. Just go home and go to sleep in his own bed, he assured me. I can assure you that your wife has not broken her vows. She will be asked to tender her resignation tomorrow and join your law firm at a generous salary with a contract with our firm. The asshole who tried to seduce her will be summarily fired and face an ethics board. With the evidence we have against him, he will be disbarred for life. Since he is effectively a full partner, he will have to be bought out, but the price will be much, much lower than he expects. Epilogue. Fiji again, exclaimed I. It was your idea to get this spinning board going. I'm just spinning it. Somehow I thought she had fixed the wheel. After all, we'd been traveling to Fiji for the past 5 years. We'd even bought a vacation home there since we spent a lot of time on the island. Heck, we were practically natives by now. Our children were welcomed by the natives. No, they weren't actually indigenous to the islands. They were all expats. We fell in with a strange bunch of people who accepted us. We were pretty good lawyers and had the backing of a very large law firm, which helped with our acceptance. Heather and I ended up moving to the islands full-time. She joined my small law firm, but with the additional income from her former firm, we expanded significantly. We hired a few more interns and lawyers. We were able to do most of our work from the islands, but occasionally we still had to return to the States for a week or so. Eventually, she got a full partnership, but at my firm. I had no choice in the matter. Our 2 daughters and son were simply essential. Besides, her billable hours at the old firm were only earned on merit. Okay, there was some nepotism involved. After all, she was my wife and legally owned half the firm. Epilogue. 10 years have passed since that fateful meeting with the founding partner of the law firm where my wife worked. Since that meeting, our arrangement has generated over $10 million in net income. My wife left a large law firm and joined my practice. Together, we expanded our firm significantly. We eventually merged our practice with her former firm and became senior partners. This generated significant profits for both us and them. We continue to live on the island, and our children now run the law firm. We still see them regularly. We never worried about the virtue of our daughters. Until they got too serious, we insisted that they bring the young man home and introduce him to us. One look at our babysitter and most of them ran as fast as they could. One young man took one look at her and got down on one knee and proposed. He declared that if he ever disappointed her, she should only tell him so, and he would gladly return to the island and stand before me and her for whatever punishment was required. At this point, they have given me 4 grandchildren, and he has babysat each of them. The oldest is now 10 years old, and he scares me. I should mention that our nanny is a former Special Forces operative and has taught all of our grandchildren almost everything she knows herself. One of our granddaughters seems to have bonded with another island resident as well. When we can't find her, we have learned to contact this woman or her husband to help us get her to show up. I have a feeling that when she grows up, she will become a full-time private investigator in our firm. About 5 years after this whole thing started, one very strange thing happened. This asshole lost his license to practice law and worked as a janitor at a local office building. He didn't drive cars anymore because every time he tried to get in the driver's seat, he would have a nervous breakdown. It must have been some kind of hidden mental trauma from severe events in his past, most likely post-traumatic stress disorder. He was riding his bike home from work one evening and was hit by a hit-and-run driver. I, of course, had an airtight alibi. When he was released from the hospital with injuries, he was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Apparently, every time someone tried to get him to go outside, he went into violent hysterics. Last week, I decided that I needed to finally sell my aunt's estate. Turns out it wasn't completely worthless after all. Who knew swamp gas was in such high demand? I received an offer from a company that wanted to build a plant to extract swamp gas and turn it into natural gas. It was an offer I couldn't refuse. Just before closing, I took my wife to the site to pick up everything I needed and threw away everything that was left. I hired some tow trucks to tow all the cars I wanted to keep to our house. Some of them were classics that could be worth a lot of money if they were fixed up a bit. I noticed my wife looking at a couple of them strangely. We had been driving home for 3 hours when she finally spoke to me. "You knew all along, didn't you?" I decided that playing dumb was the best option. "Excuse me? What are you talking about?" "About those cars. A few of them have obvious dents on them. I also recognize some of them as the cars that hit James' car when we were on our way to the hotel. Especially that pickup truck was the first one. I remember it distinctly." "I don't know what you're talking about, honey. Are you saying you were going to cheat on me? Are you saying you didn't cheat on me just because your lover had an accident on the way to the motel?" I asked. "Hell yes, I didn't want to do it, but he promised me a junior partnership. Actually, that wouldn't have happened anyway. Jason already had it all figured out. I was just about to pull the divorce trigger when Ben Stiller, the founding partner of your old law firm, walked into my office. He made me an offer I couldn't refuse. You were fired from the firm. You joined me at our firm, and we contracted with them as outside counsel. Since you never broke your oaths, I could live with that. Now James is a beggar recluse who is afraid to leave the house. He has no money, no life. He can't even afford the vilest and cheapest prostitute to visit him. As for the 2 of us, you never broke your vows. Besides, I knew you really didn't want to do it that time. I forgave you that time. Besides, the money Ben offered me was not insignificant. To date, The settlement has generated over $10 million for the firm. Now the firm is run by our children, and we are living on a semi-retirement and living the dream. I suggest you forget about these cars and just ride them." She never said another word about it. In fact, she began to enjoy the trips we were taking in that pickup and a couple other classic cars I had inherited. Life goes on. I'm sure there are plenty of guys who want me to burn this bitch just for even thinking about cheating. To them, I will tell them that she didn't actually do it, and besides, she really didn't want to do it. Of course, it was my actions that prevented it. But the point is that she didn't cheat. Besides, I got a really good deal and a hell of a lot of money for keeping her. Not only was it cheaper to keep her, but it was also very profitable. All in all, we lived a great life, and I never had any reason to worry about her afterward. True, she ended up sleeping with a senior partner in a law firm for a promotion and other perks, but since I was the senior partner, it kind of went without saying, and I'm sorry, but I have to wrap this up. My junior partner went to the beach and claimed she wanted to negotiate another allowance. Thank goodness this stretch of beach is private. I have no idea where she got that miniature horny swimsuit, but it's not going to stay on her for long. Damn it! She turned around and bent over. Whatever my wife was asking for, I had already decided I was going to give it to her. My shorts fell to the floor as I sprinted out the patio door. Stephen and Mallory had a seemingly good marriage. They had well-paying jobs, a nice house, and friendly neighbors with whom they socialized regularly. All they lacked were children to fulfill the Freeman's American dream. Stephen was the more sober of the two. He managed the family budget, and he often had to say no to Mallory's requests. She usually took his answer normally, though she sometimes sulked for a while. He often heard the words, "easy," come out of her mouth. Mallory was certainly the more fun and outgoing of the two of them. She wanted children, but she also wanted other things. We need to enjoy life as it comes, not prepare for having children. She didn't want to admit it, but she was afraid that having children would deprive her of many activities she found enjoyable. At neighborhood parties, Mallory liked to flirt and make snide remarks. She wanted to insert a provocative phrase like, "The last time I kissed Joe, I could swear it tasted like he'd just come down on," into casual conversation. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned that. Most of their friends were used to her attempts at jokes. In response, Joe would say something like, "You must not be a very good kisser, because I sure don't remember that." Over time, as people appreciated her jokes less and less, Mallory upped the level of nastiness more and more. One day she came up with what she thought was the best one. To do so, she needed the cooperation of her boss, Stanley. He wouldn't have considered the proposal if his wife hadn't agreed. She agreed, but on the condition that all the details be written down and notarized, as Stanley suggested, so that it could be proven to Stephen that it was a joke if he didn't believe otherwise. Mallory began to tell Stephen that she would have to work late sometimes. This had rarely happened before. She talked more and more about what a good boss she had. The dresses she wore to work became shorter on both the top and bottom. When she came home late at night, she left her panties smeared with mayonnaise in the laundry basket. Her lipstick was smeared, and small bruises could be seen around her breasts. She always showered when she got home, no matter how late it was. Stephen never asked Mallory for signs of her leaving. He just doesn't pay attention. Finally, Mallory escalated the game by sending an anonymous letter warning Stephen of a possible office affair. The letter was accompanied by a photo of Mallory sitting on her boss's lap. After there was no response, a photo of Mallory kneeling in front of her boss in a partially clothed state was attached. Still, nothing. Mallory gave up. She was depressed because Stephen didn't seem to care whether his wife was faithful or not. That evening, she returned home and began cooking dinner. It was ready at 6 o'clock, as usual, but her husband never showed up. By 7 o'clock, she was worried. Calls to his cell phone went to voicemail. Calls to his office were followed by a business hours message. Calls to friends were answered with "don't know." She then attempted to call the police. There were no reports of traffic accidents that resulted in anyone being taken to the hospital. She called his supervisor at home and was told that Stephen left work as usual a little after 5 o'clock. Mallory was not the type to wait patiently. She decided to drive to his office and see if his car was anywhere. After changing out of her work clothes into something more comfortable, she went upstairs to their bedroom. Mallory immediately passed out. When she woke up, she took another look around the place that had caused her to faint. Stephen's things were gone. As she sank into sorrow, the doorbell rang. The hope that it was Stephen emboldened her, and she flew down the stairs. With a wide smile on her face, she opened the door, ready to say, "Stephen," but instead saw a young woman. "Mallory Freeman?" "Yes." "I have a package for you. Can you show me some identification?" Mallory pulled out her purse, showed her driver's license, and received a package with the greeting, "You have been served." She opened the package and found that it contained what she was so afraid of, a divorce petition. Mallory looked at the provisions for a simple 50/50ths division of property. "What an asshole! He didn't even have the decency to give me an explanation. Now he's going to feel like a fool when he finds out it was just a joke." Then she thought about how she could get in touch with him. The next day, she excused herself from work and called his office shortly after it opened. Mallory was told that Stephen had gone on vacation for a couple of weeks. Nothing was said about the destination. She started to panic. Then she remembered that the divorce petition listed a lawyer for all contacts. Mallory had to leave a message for the lawyer to call her back. For half the day, she tossed between him laughing at her joke and him being determined to get a divorce. Finally, the lawyer called back. "What can I do for you, Miss Freeman?" "Please tell Stephen that it was just a joke and to stop this divorce nonsense." "I assure you, Mr. Freeman does not consider the betrayal a joke and is very serious about ending his marriage." "But there was no betrayal. The whole thing was a fake calculated to be a joke. My boss and his wife will testify. We have a dated description proving we planned this weeks ago. It was a joke, for crying out loud." "Are you laughing?" "I know Mr. Freeman isn't." "Okay, I think I've gone too far. I'll gladly apologize and show him the proof. Please give him a message." "I will. He or I will call you back." The next day, she tried to go to work. Mallory barely had time to do anything. She spent most of her time with her boss, bringing him up to speed on Stephen's reaction. He consoled her and congratulated himself on having had time to prepare a notarized statement. It was this circumstance that had prompted him to do so. He called his wife and brought her up to speed. Stephen didn't call until the evening. He wasn't thrilled. "So your affair with your boss was just an elaborate joke? Why on earth should I believe that? You did everything but include me in a threesome with him to rub my face in your infidelity." "Stephen, you know I love pranks. This one seems to have gotten out of hand. When you didn't respond to the hints I was giving you, I kept increasing the number of hints. I gave up on this prank after you didn't react in any way to the posed pictures with me and my boss. I was going to confess the night you didn't come home. It was a joke, a stupid joke. Please come home and let me make it up to you." "A joke, huh? Nice try, Mallory, but it won't work." "Stephen, I have proof. Stanley's wife didn't consent to her husband's participation unless we put it in writing beforehand. Then we had it notarized by a notary with the start date of the joke. I have it here at my house. Please come and look at it." There was a pause before Stephen replied. "Give me his wife's phone number." Mallory happily agreed. Stephen called and asked a few questions before he made sure he was really talking to Mallory's boss's wife. "Is it true that they recorded this scheme before anything happened?" "Yes, I'm so sorry I agreed to it. Your wife really convinced me that you would see the humor in it and everyone would laugh. My husband and I are rather dull people, and I think we were glad for a little excitement. I apologize for our participation in the prank. I hope you can forgive us and your wife. I believe she really loves you, even though it was a bad joke." Stephen called Mallory and set up a time for him to come over and review the document. Mallory wanted to meet him at the door with a hug, but he refused. He had always looked fairly sober, but now he was stone cold. They sat down at the kitchen table. "Is this the document that supposedly releases you from prison?" "Yes." Stephen turned on his reader and began to read the document. He felt the impressions of the notary's seal on it, which helped prove its authenticity. "Well, this seems to prove it was a joke." "Good. You can go home now." "Wait! This only proves that it was just a stunt." It doesn't excuse the behavior of a wife who would be cruel enough to pull such a prank. Your actions were not the actions of a loving, trusting, or respectful wife. I have many more reasons to pursue the divorce. Stephen, I'm so sorry. I really want to be everything you need and want to see in a wife. I've ruined everything. I will devote the rest of our marriage to making it up to you. I love you. I want to have and help raise your children. I want to grow old with you. I will do nothing more to jeopardize all of that. Can you think of anything other than a divorce to punish me? Well, I can postpone the divorce until we go through counseling. The judge will probably order it anyway. Yeah, that's a great idea. You want to find someone you're comfortable with? I have no idea where to look. You can find someone if you don't mind. I can do that. What about going home? That makes sense if we really want to give our marriage a chance. But I plan on using the guest bedroom, at least for a while. It's too soon, and my feelings are too raw to go back to the way they were before you pulled that stunt. I understand. As long as you're here. Stephen returned to the house, but the lack of intimacy was obvious to Mallory. She tried her best to be the perfect wife. She didn't stay late at work. She stayed close to him at neighborhood parties. No flirting or teasing. If she was going to be even 5 minutes late, she called. She used her sexiest lingerie or nudes to make Stephen want to have sex. It didn't work. Counseling seemed to help. Mallory explored her need to flirt and crack jokes of a sexual nature. It turned out that something from her childhood and the way her mother treated her father contributed to this. Her own insecurities about her looks, competence, whether she was worthy of her husband, and so on and so forth. Mallory believed that Stephen had finally recognized the unconscious forces that had helped create the crisis that threatened the marriage. Stephen's participation in counseling did not seem to go so well. He could not understand what he had done that had provoked his wife into such an insidious act. Perhaps he should have reacted sooner to the first signs of her infidelity, but he believed she would come to him if she was unhappy with their marriage. He was willing to trust her until he had hard evidence. However, he began preparing for divorce after the second week of her hints. When he received the pictures, he told his attorney to go ahead with the divorce. Stephen admitted that his feelings had been hurt, but he didn't think the divorce was an overreaction. He said it would take time to rebuild the trust that had been shattered by Mallory's so-called joke. Things at home seemed to be getting better little by little. Stephen and Mallory were back to their normal routine in the house, with the exception of lovemaking. But there was a tension in every conversation that hadn't been there before. Both seemed afraid of making a mistake or causing guilt. Mallory didn't think that was a way to live. At least she held back from what would have been her first choice of statement. Namely, if you're not going to have sex with me, then I can have sex with someone else. She knew that would likely cause Stephen to walk away and start the divorce all over again. Instead, she decided to ask him that night if he thought they would ever have intimacy again. Pulling up to the house, Mallory picked up her mail from the mailbox. As she went through the mail, she saw 2 identical envelopes from the courthouse, one for her and one for Stephen. She stopped and opened her envelope. It was a notice of divorce. She was getting a divorce. Mallory ran into the house and tried to keep her cool while she waited for Stephen. Surely it must be some bureaucratic error that could easily be fixed. She had to be careful not to accuse Stephen of something dastardly. Although things were going too slowly for her liking, the situation was improving. No, Stephen had barely gotten through the door when Mallory told him, "We need to talk." She handed him an envelope and watched him open it. He read the document without surprise in his eyes or emotion on his face. Stephen looked up and asked, "What do you want to talk about?" Mallory was shocked. "There must be a mistake. You postponed the divorce. We've reconciled. You have to tell them it was a mistake." "Why would I do that? I must have been kidding when I said I would postpone the divorce. You know how I love a good joke. But I showed you proof that there was no affair. You talked to Stanley's wife. She told you. We went to counseling. I know. The counseling was helpful. It was the fact that we went to counseling that allowed the judge to grant the divorce as filed. Mallory, I decided to put myself in your shoes. What would be the perfect way to cover up an affair? I, as Mallory, could enlist the help of my lover to convince his wife that he and I were going to pretend to have an affair, put the mock affair in writing, and then present it as a comic play. Meanwhile, he and I are actually having an affair. You, my husband, would find out thanks to the clues I gave you. Then, when you would get upset, I would pull out the document. You would get angry, but I would forgive you for being upset. I'd end up getting my normal life back, plus having an affair with impunity. No divorce for us, no divorce for Stanley, no job loss, no lawsuit against my company, which might have been the risk that kept me from having an affair even earlier. Stephen, you have a sick, sick mind. I was just trying to imagine what you would have done, dear. But damn it, I wasn't having an affair. Now call off the divorce. As I asked before, why would I want to do that? Because I love you. Mallory lowered her head and began to sob. I haven't cheated. I swear I haven't cheated. God, I wish I was dead. The sobs grew louder and louder. He let her go on for quite a while. Mallory, did you read the entire document? Between sobs, she replied, I think so. It just states the terms of the divorce, just like your petition. Why? Did I miss something? Her sobs subsided a little. Who signed the dissolution of marriage? Some court official, I believe. I'll have a look at it in a moment. The handwriting is bad. It looks like Donald Duck. What the hell? Sober Stephen, chuckled. You know, I think I'm beginning to understand these shenanigans. You bastard, I should kill you. Stephen smiled. How about you kill me by fucking with my brains? Mallory couldn't help but grin through her tears. As long as you're dead, you bastard, I don't care how. Now let's go. They headed to the bedroom and began to create a big family. Epilogue. I hope the ending wasn't too obvious and enjoyed it. I pass by the bar 3 times a week for a year on my way to the gym. Last year, I decided to get in shape for my 40th birthday. That big day is tomorrow. Last week, my wedding dress fit me again. I was so proud. Unfortunately, no one seemed to care. My husband was away in another state. My kids, friends, co-workers, too busy or unwell. Even my parents were away. So tonight, I hit the bar. The first drink quickly disappeared. The second one soon followed. Joe bought me a third, despite my words. I'm married, 2 kids. That didn't stop him. He listened, smiled, and then made me laugh. The alcohol helped. I forgot about my problems. Later, an explosion of laughter meant our heads were close. Joe moved closer, but I pulled myself together. I'd better get going, I said, standing up abruptly. I noticed that the bar was empty. Everyone was either heading home or to another bar. The noise in my head meant I couldn't drive. Joe walked me outside despite my protests. I'll get a cab. I'll call an Uber. He'll be here in 5 minutes. We stood and waited. A cool breeze blew across the deserted main street. I shuddered. Joe threw off his coat and threw it over my shoulders. That made me flinch for another reason. He moved forward, wrapping his arms around me. I can't let you freeze. I wanted to snuggle up to him again. It was indecent, and I didn't dare. The Uber arrived, a small sedan with a Middle Eastern driver. I got nervous. The cab was company-owned, registered. Joe sensed my hesitation. I'll ride with you to make sure you got home okay. The look I gave him made him clarify. I'll stay in the car and come straight back. I agreed. It was comforting. I leaned back against him in the back seat. His arm around me again. This time it went higher. His thumb and index finger flirted with my breasts. I tilted my head back to look into his eyes to see his intentions. He smiled and lowered his face before his lips touched mine for a moment. The shrill ringing of my phone broke the spell. My husband? Yes. I had sobered up. A voicemail notification quickly sounded, followed by 2 messages. Where are you? Are you okay? I'm on my way home. I had a drink after the gym, waited a long time for a cab. Okay, call me later tomorrow. Yeah, right, I thought, like you care. I took Joe's hand away and sat up. His fingertips touched me once more when I moved. Silly girl. What have you gotten yourself into? I made sure there was some space between us. Pull over here somewhere, I said, as the driver pulled over. I got out quickly, not wanting to say goodbye to Joe while there was a barrier between us. He rolled down his window. Thanks for the drink and for listening. We'll wait for you to come inside. I looked back at the house behind me. Sorry, that's not my house. It's the next street over. I should be more careful. You go back. Joe flinched and opened the cab door. You go ahead. It's right down the alley. I turned and walked, ending the conversation. I heard the car door close and then it pulled away. Footsteps behind me. Being cautious wouldn't hurt. I kept walking. The alley was dark, but I knew it well. Joe kept up. I was almost to the house when I caught my heel, stumbled. He caught me. I was in his strong arms again. Then his lips were on mine. I was in front of the house, my skirt pulled up, my legs wrapped around Joe's waist. Not here, I breathed out, pulling away. We crossed the street in a decent manner. While I fumbled with my keys at the front door, he pounced on me again. I was looking for the keyhole when my skirt was pulled up again. I tensed and swam as he started to have me. I needed to get inside so as not to entertain the neighbors. Turning the key, I swung the door open. Surprise! It started as a hoarse scream, but quieted down. There they were, my friends, my neighbors, my parents, my kids. In the center, my husband was holding a bottle of champagne. The cork popped. The bottle of fizzy liquid slipped from his hands, fell to the stone steps, and shattered into tiny shards. Just like my marriage.
Mike couldn't have imagined that this day could get any worse. It was bad enough that he had been invited to their office today, where they handed him an envelope and told him the bad news. And now he had to go home and break the news to his wife Michelle. They had been married for 3 years, right out of college, and were just now starting their careers. They were both making decent money, and yet Mike couldn't yet imagine how that would affect their financial situation. All the way home, Mike was immersed in his own thoughts, barely aware of what was going on around him, when his phone rang. Hello. Hi, honey, are you okay? You don't sound so good. Sorry, I've had a rough day. I'll tell you all about it when I get home. Okay, I have something to tell you, too. Oh, and I forgot to warn you, my parents are coming over for dinner tonight. I'll see you at home, love you. Love you, too. When the call ended, Mike groaned. He liked Michelle's parents, but the last thing he wanted to do was give her the bad news, in front of her parents. On the other hand, though, if you think about it that way, maybe their presence wasn't such a bad thing. They'd been through a lot together over the years, so maybe they could help convince Michelle that this was just another obstacle, and that by working together they could find a way to deal with it. Mike didn't want to spoil everyone's dinner, but decided it was best to break the bad news as soon as they got home. That way they would have enough time to discuss everything and try to work out a plan of further action. Mike, holding the envelope in his hand, walked through the door of their little apartment and saw Michelle and her parents, Tom and Mary Beth, sitting on the couch, waiting for him to return. Michelle had the widest smile on her face as she sat holding her mother's hand, and it pained him to know that he would cause her smile to turn to tears. Honey, I know you've had a hard day, but I have something important to tell you, Michelle said as soon as he crossed the threshold. Since you and I have been trying to have a baby for the past 10 months without success, my mom and I decided to go to a fertility doctor today. There they took some blood from me to run some tests while we talked to the doctor. After a while, the nurse came back and gave the test results to the doctor. After reviewing them, he said that there was nothing he could do to help me at the moment. Because I am already pregnant. Mike stared at Michelle in silence for a minute, digesting what she had just told him. When her words reached him, tears streamed down his face. Michelle, thinking that Mike was shocked by the news, jumped up to hug him, but immediately recoiled in horror when he barked in her face, "Don't talk to me." Tom and Mary Beth stared at Mike in bewilderment. They had never seen him like that before. "Mike, what happened? I don't understand anything. This is what we've been waiting for. Isn't it what you wanted?" "What did I want? This is definitely not what I wanted. I wanted to have children with the woman I love most in the world, raise them, and then grow old together, surrounded by family and friends. That's what I wanted." Michelle could barely hold back the tears. "What are you talking about? We're going to have a baby anyway, and you and I are going to grow old together." "No, you're the one having a baby, not us," Mike spat out venomously. "Have you already forgotten that I had an appointment today, too, and that I also had to go to a fertility doctor to get advice on your pregnancy?" But instead, he said in a shaky voice, lifting the envelope he was holding above his head before tossing it on the coffee table, "This is what I got, a shitty piece of paper that took away all my hopes and dreams." Since no one else said a word, Tom asked, "What is it, Mike?" "The results of today's examination." And, looking at Michelle with eyes full of hatred, he added, "I'm sterile."
As I sat in the courtroom waiting for my wife's attorney to finish his opening statement, I couldn't help but marvel at how much my life had changed in such a short time. How I had gone from the proverbial happily married man to the equally proverbial last person to know. "Stay on point, Mr. Jeffries." The judge, the Honorable Sir Winston Jenkins, reprimanded my wife's lackey, confirming my earlier opinion of what a decrepit old bastard he was. "The point I'm trying to make, Your Honor," Jeffries replied cautiously, "if my client's husband, Michael Jones, had been more honest with Mrs. Jones, we wouldn't be in this court this morning." "All right, counselor," the good judge agreed, "but stay on point." "Well, one stroke in her favor, but what do I care?" Jeffries went on, intent on proving to everyone that my wife's actions were justified and that even I was to blame, while I switched off, losing interest in what he was saying, and mentally returning to that day. The day that had so tragically changed my life. That day. I had several meetings that day, but with the exception of the last one, I didn't think about them. And how could you, when your own boss had brought something so serious down on you? "For God's sake, Mike," he muttered as I sat down across from him. "What are you, blind or something? You really don't understand what's going on?" "What are you talking about, Tom?" I demanded, surprised by this outburst from my boss, who was also one of my best friends. "What did I do?" "Not you," he growled. "That damn wife of yours. She's at it again." "Oh, shit. Who is it this time?" I moaned back, realizing what he was telling me without further explanation. I knew Tom had helped me through that last time Jane had cheated on me, advised me to get back together with her, but to keep an eye on what she was up to in the future. Apparently he did that on my behalf better than I did myself. "Gerald Halfpinch," Tom stated, and in such a casual manner that I was left in no doubt. "You know him?" I nodded in confirmation that I'd met the nasty bastard a few times when we'd been to Jane's work parties. Tall, dark-haired, you know the kind. I thought Jane had more taste. It's bad enough that she broke our marriage vows again, but with a waster like that? Our meeting ended with Tom warning me not to do anything stupid, although this time stupid didn't include throwing her ass out. I had some planning to do, and I was in no hurry, but I didn't suspect for a second how deadly serious the whole affair would turn out to be. "My client has never denied her actions." Jeffrey's grumpy voice broke through my self-imposed veil. "It's all a matter of justification. Who's really to blame?" "Not me," I muttered to myself, and went back to my recent memories. I sat and waited for Jane to come home, knowing that this time, yes, this time her actions would not be glossed over. Yes, this time she would pay the price I had to pay last time. "Hi, sweetie," Jane greeted me as she entered our living room. "Why are you sitting here in the dark?" "Waiting for you," I replied briefly, and the tone of my voice made her freeze. "What's wrong, dear?" "Gerald Halfpinch is what's wrong," I growled at her, and her face lowered, and the guilt became obvious. So much so that she didn't even try to deny it. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go that far. It was just some harmless flirting we both got carried away with." I was brought out of my reverie by being called by name, and I realized it was finally my turn to make my point to the court. But even as I walked forward somewhat nervously and went through the formalities of being sworn in, I couldn't help but let those last few moments with Jane pass through me. "I'm sorry, Mike," Jane offered when I didn't respond to her earlier attempt. "Of course, it's over. I'll tell him about it at work tomorrow morning." "Not so easy, Jane," I hummed, clutching the piece of paper in my hand and wondering how I had the nerve to tell her what I was about to say. "Not easy. No, Mike," Jane tried to reassure me. "But we managed it last time, so we can do it again." "Not this time, Jane." "Of course we can, honey," she smiled at me. "I never had feelings for him. It was just sex that didn't mean anything." "Unfortunately, it did matter this time, Jane," I replied grimly, placing the paper in my hand on the table in front of her. "What is it?" She asked. "I don't have my glasses. No divorce? You must be joking. If you think—" "Worse," I interrupted her loudly. "Warminster-on-Sea Regional Health Board." Jane read from the unfolded paper in front of her and squinted. "What does this have to do with us?" "AIDS," I shouted at her. "Fucking AIDS, HIV, whatever you want to call it. That's what it has to do with it." "Have you been tested?" muttered my wife, stunned by my proof of her obvious perfidy, staring blindly at the still untouched, traitorous piece of paper in front of us. "What the hell does it look like?" shouted I back. "What else needs to be said or reported? What's the point of this?" Jane, my wife, didn't even ask me if I could have played it that way, knowing full well that she was the only cheater in the family. Knowing full well where this terrible disease could have come from and that even in this day and age it could mean a potential death sentence. Without another word, she jumped to her feet and ran out into the street, the squeal of her tires being heard several blocks away. "Mr. Jones, are you listening to me?" That brought me back to the real, present world. "Yes, of course I am. I'm sorry, Mr. Jeffries," I replied, shaking my head to clear my thoughts. "Mr. Jones," he continued, "we understand you discovered that your wife was having an affair behind your back." It can hardly be called an affair, I thought absent-mindedly, but she certainly slept with that bastard Halfpinch. "Order in the court," echoed through the crowd, and there was relative silence again as the Honorable Worthy told me to stick to more pertinent comments. "As you say," continued my wife's attorney, eyeing me as a shark would eye its prey. "But you must have realized what effect the news that she had given you speed would have on your wife, that she must be infected too." "Upset her, I guess," I agreed, seeing no point in denying it. After all, that was the point. "Upset her so much that she immediately drove her car, found Mr. Halfpinch, and, while her thoughts were so upset, hit him with her car in the street outside his office?" "Not a bad result, huh?" I smirked, and again the court rumbled, and again I was called to order, and again I was warned to watch my words. "Don't you care, Mr. Jones?" Jeffrey spat out in my direction. "You don't care that because of your callousness a man will have to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair?" My inarticulate reply that I not only didn't care, but I was damn happy with the outcome, was overridden by the opposing counsel's shout of "Objection!" as he jumped to his feet. "Objection sustained," the good judge ruled. "Mrs. Jones is on trial here, Mr. Jeffries. Not Mr. Jones. Ask questions on the merits." "No more questions," Jeffries snarled, taking his seat and realizing he wasn't going to get anything out of me, and the prosecuting attorney took his seat, barely containing a smirk. "Just one question, Mr. Jones. Just for the record," he began. "You don't have speed, do you?" "I hope not," I replied rather cheerfully. "The letter from the Warminster Regional Health Board that led to this unfortunate incident," he continued, We understand that Mrs. Jones never read it, so what was it about exactly? Nothing much, I told the court, no longer quite able to contain the smile on my face. Just a reminder that my doctor's appointment for an ingrown toenail checkup was scheduled for next month. I didn't stay until the end of the trial, and it's still going on as I sit in a pub near my house enjoying a pint of the best bitter, and the outcome is unlikely to affect me much. Whether they convict her of attempted murder or not, we're done. They can't convict me of a little white lie. In terms of impact, though, that's more than I can say for the short skirt and tight top Mary the bartender wore today. Interesting? Nice legs, nice breasts, pretty face and all? Interesting? I'll have to find something else to do for a while.